Welcome to So and So, brought to you by BERNINA, made to create. I'm Meg Goodman, and you're about to enjoy a casual conversation with a special member of the sewist and quilting community. A conversation about how they got started, what inspires them, what excites them, and their connection to this community. Our guest today is Kelly Dempsey, a sustainable fashion designer and Project Runway Season 14 runner-up. She's become a leading voice for sustainability and equitability in the fashion industry and has been featured on Good Morning America and in Marie Claire. Born and raised right outside Boston in Munsen, Kelly taught herself to upcycle when she was 9 years old. Bullied in school, she used these experiences to eventually launch a terrifically successful career. Her passion for upcycling has led her to numerous opportunities, several of which are her courses on sewing and upcycling. When not teaching or creating, Kelly loves to be in nature, walking along the beach, being in nature, and listening to her headphones. She currently lives in Boston with her boyfriend, and they're about to celebrate 10 years together. Hi, Kelly, and welcome to So and So.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
We have got some fun things to talk about and some very timely and some poignant things. So I'm just going to jump right in. When and how did you learn to sew?
So I started sewing and upcycling and experimenting with my clothing when I was around 9 years old. I grew up in a really small town, as you mentioned, outside of Boston. And as you know, small towns can be tough when you're a kid going to school. Our family was a little tight on money, and I would shop at the thrift store that was actually 2 houses down from me called the Church Mouse. My mom would give me 50 cents, $1, $2, and I would rummage through these thrift store bins, these quarter-cent bins, and I loved it. I had so much fun doing this as a kid, but being in such a small town, I'm rummaging through my small population's schoolmates' clothing, not knowing it. So I would be so proud of my findings, go to school, and people would notice that that was their clothing. And I started getting picked on for it. And I grew up in a very creative environment. My mom had turned the front of our house into a craft store. She was always very resourceful. We had hours on our front door. We would go to yard sales. She would find silverware, at people's, we call them tag sales, but people know them as yard sales. Mm-hmm. And she would turn them into wind chimes. She would make all kinds of things from, people that were giving away stuff from their yard sales. And I learned sort of how to be resourceful at a young age, watching her turn people's trash to treasure. So instead of, being a victim of, well, this stinks that I'm just going to get picked on, I started experimenting and ripping up my clothing and sticking pieces of other clothing with other stuff. And, I got the bullying to stop. And it was a moment for me that sort of a liberation where I am in control even without certain resources mm-hmm. that other kids had. And it sort of sparked this, it did. It got me really into, overcoming things and just enjoying fashion design and being expressive at that age.
So out of necessity and interest and creativity, you learned to sew. You mentioned being bullied, Kelly. I want to talk about this for just a second. You've said in what I've learned about you that this has been experiences that you say ignited you to overcome challenges. And there are a lot of kids out there who are bullied a lot. What advice do you have for them?
I'm just so grateful. I really dedicate my platform to showing people the importance of thrifting. And, it's become trendy, and people that have thrifted, I've thrifted 30 years now. I'm going to be 40 in a couple months, and I don't look at it as, oh, it's trendy. The prices went up a few dollars. I'm grateful for the kids that are 9, 10, 11 years old that were in the situation that I was in growing up and don't have to be bullied, because now they can go get a $7, pair of pants and be cool and not have to go through what I went through. And I've dedicated my platform the last 8 years to really promoting the coolness of thrifting, because I understand what it's like to be on that fence where there's that is your only option.
Mm-hmm.
And kids don't understand that at certain ages.
It's tough at any age, and overcoming that was paramount for you. You eventually ended up on Project Runway. We're going to talk about that in depth in a minute, but you call yourself Kelly from the Deli after working at Bob's Italian Foods in Medford. Was this a defining experience for you, and why did you choose Kelly from the Deli to identify yourself?
So one of my participants, the other contestant on the show, Merlene, she actually came up with the name Kelly from the Deli on the show. But it's funny how things work in life, because I waitressed for 18 years, and I chose waitressing because it's a very flexible job. I always had dreams of being a fashion designer. So I would apply for things in New York for events. And if I got picked for it, I would, have to switch my hours really quickly in days. And waitressing always allowed me to do that. I ended up getting this weird health problem when I was waitressing, and I liked waitressing. It's good exercise.
Mm-hmm.
It's quick money. But I got this dizziness over my body, and they actually never figured out what it was, and it went away. But I think it was related to anxiety, because I definitely have anxiety. I've learned how to control it. But I think it was sort of like an anxiety attack thing, that anytime I went back into the restaurant, I started getting lightheaded again. And I ended up quitting waitressing, and it was weird. And then it was something totally different. So I got a job at Bob's Deli. That was where I went after that. And I've never worked in a job like that. And I was only there for 2 months before Project Runway sent me an email. I didn't apply for that season. So sometimes I say, when you think things are really bad, I would have never been Kelly from the Deli if I didn't get that weird health episode and thought my life was falling apart, when actually it was falling into place.
I like that. When you think it's falling apart, it's falling into place. When you were on Project Runway, you took Tim Gunn to the Deli. What was that like?
It was very surreal, because I watched Project Runway since season 1. I was always a huge fan of the show, and me and my aunt would watch 10 years. I think we did the math almost to the day of him coming to do the home visit, and we would sit and watch it and say, he's going to be in here someday. He's going to be in this room. You're going to be on the show. And I always spoke very positive, as if things already happened. And then we did the math. It was almost 10 years to the day that he was standing in that room, and bringing him to the Deli, just in a place where I never saw that coming. And then he's standing there. It was just very surreal.
I can imagine. And as long as we're talking about Project Runway, how did you get to be on the show?
So I always believe in putting out your work. So like I said, I would go to New York all the time for fashion events, and I would always think in my mind for years, oh, this is my big break. And I never had money or connections. I would sleep in my car in parking garages. I would take the $10, $15 bus. I would do what I had to do to get my quote unquote big break. I've done so many events, as a very amateur designer, and I never got the breakthrough that I thought I was going to get on that one opportunity. So I ended up taking all of that accumulation of work over 10, 15 years, and I just made a Tumblr page online where you can post all your work. I don't even know if there is still Tumblr. It's just a place like Instagram. You can really post, pictures. So I would just post. And eventually I found out, when I asked Project Runway production after I was on it, how they found me. And I believe they found me from my Tumblr page. So even though I wasn't getting the instant gratification in those moments, I was accumulating something that was something more than those individual moments, that they were able to find me that way.
What was it like to be on the show?
It was absolutely amazing, but being the only self-taught designer was very intimidating when I got there. I did go to Mass Art for 1 year, but it's a state regulated school, so you don't really even take real fashion classes, so to say. And I was sewing for 20 years before that. My dad got sick. I ended up leaving. I got full grants to go and everything. So I went home to take care of my dad. But I consider myself self-taught, and walking in there and hearing everybody talk how they study in Prague and they've done this and they do all this stuff, and I just think about how I sleep in my parking garage and I sew in my aunt's moldy basement, and
Mm-hmm.
and it was like a moment at the beginning of, oh no, what did I get myself into? I hope I don't make a fool of myself. And it ended up, I had a lot of passion and fire going in, and I think that led the way.
Can you share any behind the scenes stories with us?
Well, something people don't know, which is so funny, is you have to take like a 500 question psychiatric test before you can even be accepted to be on the show. And
Huh.
you have to do it at your doctor's office. They have to literally open the envelope and you have to sit there. I thought it was going to be like 10 questions. So I went there 20 minutes before they closed, and it was 500 questions. And I ended up, getting it done. They let me stay a little bit later, but there is a lot that goes into it, because for 3 months you don't have a phone, you can't watch TV, you can't go for a walk by yourself, you can't read a magazine, and when the cameras aren't rolling, you're on something called hard ice. There's either hard ice or soft ice, and that means hard ice is no talking, and that's like 90% of the time when we're up behind the scenes before the cameras are rolling, because they want to catch all the moments on camera. So if we're talking and all this stuff when the cameras aren't around, then once the cameras are there, it's just going to be like kind of boring because we've been talking the whole time. So I get it, but it is definitely mentally. I see why they do the psychiatric test.
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Uh-huh. I'm assuming that this goes on with a lot of the reality shows, but to us who just watch them, we don't understand what you all have gone through to prepare that content.
Yeah, and when you watch Project Runway, you'll see when we have runway day and they're judging the outfits. I think it's like 45 seconds on when you're watching it on TV. It's actually, we're there at like 5 in the morning and we don't leave till 11 o'clock at night. It is an all day, like very, very long process in between filming and sitting in a room. So it's like, it's so fun. It was actually fun to like see how they edit it down and how much work actually goes into creating that 45 seconds.
And you really had to put your life on hold for the whole duration of filming the show.
Yeah, you couldn't even call anybody. They let us call our dad for Father's Day, thank God, because my dad was sick. But probably made one phone call for 3 months, and it was my boyfriend, and it was on camera.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, so you don't talk to anybody except the people that you're there with, and it's very, if you have a hard time with that, I'm very go with the flow. I've lived in different places. I've been in really hard situations where I'm okay with times like that. But if you're very structured and you need to do things at certain times, I could see that being very difficult for some of the contestants.
And that was season 14,
Yes.
correct? Okay, good reference for those of us who want to go back and take a look. Now that we know all of what you went through, you can watch it through kind of a different lens.
Yeah.
One of the things that is really important to you is educating people about fast fashion. And you have said that it's the second largest polluter behind oil, with 80% of thrifted items ending up in landfills. That's shocking. Would you dive deeper into this for us, Kelly, and give us some steps we can take to help address this?
Absolutely. And I feel like it's not a consumer problem. It's not that we're the problem. It is these big corporations that take advantage of really cheap material that doesn't last, that they can make very, very affordably, too affordably actually, where, most of the clothing that is made fast fashion is made overseas, Bangladesh. There was the Rana Plaza disaster that happened 10 years ago now, where the accord was put in, which was a binding agreement in between a lot of different countries, because the Rana Plaza disaster happened after over 1,000 garment workers lost their lives in a building that wasn't held up to code.
Hmm.
But there was a lot more that went into it. Like Walmart. Primark said they weren't part of it. Then, when the disaster happened, there was evidence that they were getting their clothing made there. It was supposed to be a 2-story building. They didn't have proper coding. So besides, the environmental problems of fast fashion, the ethical, turmoil that these garment workers, 1 in 4 people in the world are garment workers, most of them women, over 90% are not paid a living wage. And a lot of people use the excuse, there's a different minimum wage in different countries, but it's not necessarily the amount they're being paid, even though they are getting paid under the minimum wage, most of them. It's the amount of work. From someone who sews, the amount of work that is expected of them. The company Shein, which is now one of the biggest, with rivaling with Amazon, Coca-Cola, for polluters in the world, they came out of nowhere. They made $30 billion last year, and a couple journalists went undercover 2 years ago, and they discovered that these garment workers are making 500 garments a day, getting paid 4 cents a garment. If they make it takes 18 hours. If they make one mistake, they can dock up to half of their daily pay, which is a ton of money. They get 1 day off a month, and they don't get proper bathrooms and nothing. And as someone who sews, I feel like, and I have a platform, I'm grateful that I don't have to do that to survive, and they're not even surviving. And if I have a voice that can help these people that don't have a voice, because if they speak out, they lose their jobs. And, with Rana Plaza, it was supposed to be in Bangladesh 10 years ago. It was supposed to be a 2-story building. Somebody with political ties got building code to get that building up to 9 floors. And the first floor and the second floor were banking and retail stores, and then the rest seven so floors were garment factories. And these garment workers were noticing cracks in the walls, and they were like, no, it's fine. No, it's fine. They had a building code person come in, and the guy, the building code man said, this is absolutely not safe. It needs to be closed down. It needs to be shut down. Nobody can go to work tomorrow. The bankers and the people in the retail stores on the first 2 floors got the memo that the building was not safe, and none of them showed up for work. Mr. Rana, who owned the factory of the garment workers, knew that the building was going to go down, and still let over 1,000 garment workers, made them come in, said that they were going to be fired if they did not, just wanting to get one more day of work, knowing the building was going down, and it did. And over 1,000 garment workers lost their lives. And I just feel if I can have a voice, and there's a lot of people like me that do this, spread the same information. It's people don't realize, sort of the dark side of our clothing. And it's kind of, after Project Runway, I had the opportunity to make certain collections with brands. And when I learned what was going to go into it, where it was going to be made, what I was going to be doing, I realized upcycling clothing as a kid wasn't an accident. And now I have over 600 students on my platform teaching people how to be sustainable, upcycling their clothing and breaking free from fast fashion.
Kelly, when you first started talking about this, you said it's not as much a consumer problem. And all of us have clothing items we no longer wear. Some of us donate them to thrift shops. Some throw them away. There's a lot of us consumers out there also who may not be as talented sewing as you are, or others who make their own clothes. So what can we do to address this problem, even in a small way?
So the best thing to do is from now, I always say the best way to shop is to shop our closets. The most sustainable way to shop is to shop our closets. Just consume less. We're kind of like brainwashed, and that these fast fashion companies make billions of dollars. They know how to market, and ever changing trends. They use influencers on social media to Sheen haul. That's got 300 billion views, that hashtag. So they're using very tricketing marketing to make people think an item worn a couple times is old. So with the stuff you already have, there's websites, and I have a link in my bio on that I can share with you, different places that you can donate your items where they will go to use. There's also creative ways. I actually was just, I just created a challenge called Mittens for Good that launched on the BERNINA We All Sew blog,
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, I'm not sure if you saw that, where you can take your old sweaters, and I have a pattern, and you could even hand sew it. It's super easy, and you can turn your sweaters into mittens and then donate them to your local BERNINA dealers, and then they're going to donate them to the homeless. We have over 500,000 homeless right now, 1 in 500 people in the United States. So I started a Mittens for Good challenge. So if you have old sweaters, that is a great place to donate those.
At the end of our conversation, I want to make sure that you do mention that link in your bio. We're going to talk about how to get a hold of you, and we will be information rich. Upcycling, you are just, even just saying passionate advocate, it doesn't seem like it fully explains how you feel. But what I love is your theory that there is no wrong in creativity. Would you talk a little bit about the process of upcycling and what we can do, ranging from the beginner to the advanced?
Yeah, and I have courses with, I actually like to work with people that are beginners, because I have a course called Thrift Flipping 101, and it doesn't even include any sewing. And people always say, I could never do what you do, or every time I go to the thrift store, I can never find anything good to upcycle. But I always say it's mindset 90%, because if you go into a thrift store and how do I always find something good? It's because I don't look at something as a shirt. I look at everything as raw material.
Mm.
So it's really about looking at things in a different way. You could easily say, "Oh, this skirt was some lady's skirt that is I would never do anything with." Or you could say, "Wow, this is a beautiful textile that I could cut up and put with this." And it's really about your mindset when you look at things. I started making belt bags from the thrift store, so I'll take belts that they're everywhere at the thrift store, and people don't know what to do with them, and I use them as strappings as my bags. I have a course for a belt bag where you can take like items from thrift stores, and I just taught an in-person class, and you don't need a lot of material, so you don't need like 10 yards of fabric. You can just have a little skirt or a shirt or something. But I think everything is mindset with the way you look at things. And sorry, I kind of lost your question there.
Yeah, you just answered it. You
Okay.
did.
Okay.
Well, you were talking about all these projects. Do you have a favorite upcycling project that you did?
I love everything in a different way. Oh, you were saying, sorry, I remember the one part. You were saying that, how I say there's no wrong in creating.
Right.
So I feel like that. I feel like a lot of people are scared to sew, and I found out why people are afraid to sew. It's because they're afraid of making a mistake. They're
Hmm.
not actually afraid of actually sewing. They're afraid that they're not going to do it right. And being somebody who's 98% self-taught, you learn from experience, and you don't look at the end product. I think if you're focused on what the end product's going to look like, you're going to lose that path along the process of creating it, where that is where the magic is. It's not at the end when you see it, it's while you're creating it. And if you know that there's no wrong, and it's just a form of expression, then you won't be scared, and you're going to get to your path through each step as you go.
Hmm. And then we were going to talk about your favorite upcycling project, something that, just really has always resonated with you, something that you did. Or maybe it hasn't even happened yet. I don't know.
So I did just do a partnership with Mettler Thread, and they sent me some recycled thread. And I just took this is one of my favorite I've ever made, and this was only a couple weeks ago. But I've been saving trash, like paper and plastic trash, and I made a tote bag, like a high-end tote, where I made it like a high-end trash bag. And I used their thread to sort of stitch over all that thread, and I put a piece of shower curtain over their thread. I made like a mosaic design. Took me 15 hours of sewing, and it's one of my favorite pieces. And besides that, I would say I upcycled a sleeping bag from a thrift store and made it into a 5-piece crazy outfit. I made a duffel bag and a jacket and a hat, and it was during COVID, so I made a little matching mask, and it was just wild, but it was really cool.
Sounds like COVID gave a lot of us a lot of time to be creative, I think.
Yes.
You talked about your 600 students. You do online upcycling, beginner sewing platform. Um, how do you come up with these courses? Tell us a little bit more about how you come up with this and what people can expect when they work with you.
So I really like working with people that have never sewn or are beginner sewing because I feel like being self-taught, I can speak in a way where they can understand just like I taught myself, not professionally trained, which I have no I think that's amazing, but that's just not my story. But I think people that have never sewn, I have a good way of communicating with people, or we use the same verbiage where, I can help them understand. And I really enjoy watching people, want to be creative and then actually doing it and taking that step because we all have our own form of creativity. And it's fun to sort of like pull that out of people and see their interpretation. Like with my belt bag course, I love seeing the belt bags people make and how they've all picked different materials and different belts. And it's just fun to see everybody's own, creativity coming out. It's nice.
You see yourself as a very positive person, and that's obvious in this conversation. But you said that you have heard no a lot of times. Would you share a time or two with us about when you heard no and then what you did to move through it?
So before I was on Project Runway and I said I would get these opportunities to go to New York and I would, jump on a bus and, go down there for the day. That was only because I would send probably 50 emails a day, every day, all the time. And I maybe heard back. It would be a copy paste, right? But I would be like, oh, magazines here. I'd be on Craigslist a lot. Oh, I would go magazines in Tokyo. I never sort of thought, oh, I couldn't do this. I just know that if you don't put yourself out there, you're never going to get anything back. So the right things are going to show up when they show up. So I kind of threw myself out everywhere. I mean, I would be excited if I got, a response, but I never heard back from 90% of those emails,
Hmm.
99%. And it only takes a couple of the yeses, right? Then Project Runway found me. So it's like all those no's and then the couple yeses that I created my portfolio. And then that one yes was what, catapulted me into, what I'm doing now. So if I gave up on those hundreds and thousands of no's I probably heard, then I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. You know what I mean? I think if you just trust that the right thing will find you. What I always say, what you're seeking is seeking you. So
Hmm.
if you trust that process, then no won't bother you because you know that it's protecting you from something and you're guided somewhere else.
So given all you've done to get to where you are today, what's next for you?
The options are endless, right? Who knows?
Sure.
No, I want to really. I just became an ambassador for the Fashion Act, which is a bill they're trying to pass or they are looking to pass in New York that will create sustainability through fast fashion, supply chain that will trickle to all these other countries and really help people. So I'm really focused on educating people on fast fashion, and if I can just create unique art and inspire other people to express their creativity, then that is the plan as well. I also have ideas where I want to have my own TV show where I kind of sort of do my own Project Runway thing. Um, I have different ideas with that. And then I also want to start sort of a subscription based thing where you can kind of follow me behind the scenes on my journey of doing all these crazy things I'm doing, following me along from a real point of view.
I have no doubt that this is all going to happen, given where you've come to today. I do want to go back to that Fashion Act. Is that New York only, or is that nationwide?
So you have to be a New York resident to vote on that.
Mm-hmm.
And there are other bills that are going to be introduced in other countries. But right now, the Fashion Act is just New York, but them being, one of the major fashion capitals of the world, with that getting passed, that's going to set an example, for the rest of the world to follow as they are a trendsetter, right? So it's an important place to start.
It is. It's a good place. So you were talking about what you'd like to do, and we're going to talk about your dream. You talked about a TV show. You talked about subscription based. Fill in this blank. Someday what?
I want to inspire as many people as I can to follow the beat of their own drum.
Okay. We talked about a lot today, Kelly. Is there any question I didn't ask you that you wish I had?
One really cool thing I want to share that was a full circle moment for me is I just had the opportunity to be on the biggest billboard in Times Square for Fashion Week.
Oh, wow.
And I'm in it. It's a picture of me wearing pants that I made from curtains from a thrift store. And it says, Curtains to Couture, redefining the future of fashion. And it was sort of a full circle moment for me, as I used to be picked on for thrift clothes. And then, it was just a really big moment. And that happened for this last Fashion Week. I do some work with a magazine that has access to billboards, and they asked me if I wanted to do that, and it was really awesome. So,
do you have a picture of that?
I do.
Billboard. So when we, as you know, we share pictures of your choosing on the So-and-so website along with your episode. We'd love it if you'd include that in your suite of pictures that you're going to send us, because that was your moment. It all came back to you in seeing that, and we'd love to see that.
Absolutely. I have a bunch of them, so you get one.
Excellent. Kelly, this has been just a wonderful and fun conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for listening, and I appreciate it.
Now, if we want to reach out to you for more information, to follow you, and you also talked about that link in your bio for sending clothes. First of all, how can we reach out to you if we want to have more conversation, follow you, see what you're up to?
So I have a Facebook, Instagram, and a TikTok. I'm most active, I would say, on Facebook and Instagram. But if you follow me on Instagram, if you click the link in my bio, it has a link of about 10 different links. It has my course platform if you want to take courses. It has the resources where to donate, items that you're not sure where to donate. It has facts about fast fashion if you want to learn more, how to follow me on all other platforms. So I would say my Linktree link on my bio on Instagram, or I could just send you that Linktree link separate as well if you want that.
Excellent. We'll include that in the show notes. And you have a website. How do we find that?
So my website is kellydempsey.com. I do sell my one-off designs on a website called Rack Attic that I've had for the last 7 years since Project Runway, but I'm actually moving Rack Attic over to Kelly Dempsey, and just everything's going to be Kelly Dempsey in the next week or so. So Kelly Dempsey is where you can find my courses and eventually my shop page.
Excellent. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Well, there you have it. Another story about someone just like you, someone for whom sewing is so much more than a hobby. It's a way of life. It's a connection to something much bigger. If you know someone you think has an outstanding story, a story that should be shared on this podcast, please drop me a note to meg@soandsopodcast.com or just complete the form on our website. Be sure to subscribe to, review, and rate this podcast on your favorite platform, and visit our website soandso.com for more information about today's and all of our guests. That's SEWANDSO podcast.com. And finally, I want to thank BERNINA for making this program possible. I'm Meg Goodman, and I look forward to you joining us next time on So and So.